All right, I think we'll start the meeting. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. If I have a second.
Wait a second. No, you don't need a second.
I don't need
no problem. I just need roll call.
All right, so can we call a roll call?
Mr. Craddy?
Here.
Mr. Bittman?
Here.
Mr. Troy? Mr. Quagliano?
Here.
Mrs. Murray? Here. Mrs. Gallagher? Here. Mr. Thompson?
Here. All right, with that, we'll start the meeting, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Dr. Zier, I think you've got a couple people.
Good evening. I would like to invite Scott Iddings and Diane Jewell up to the podium. If you would like to tell the audience, introduce yourself and your role in the district. How about that?
Hello, my name is Scott Iddings. I am the principal at Lee Elementary.
Hi, I'm Diane Jewell, and I work in the preschool.
All right, if you could rise for the pledge.
Ready? Do the words. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. All right, Dr. Zier, don't move. You are set for an academic spotlight to recognize some employees.
Absolutely. So, our favorite time of the year as the year comes to an end, Teacher Appreciation Week. What we've done historically in the district, we recognize those teachers and staff that have reached milestones in the district. So, teachers who get tenure, 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. If they're retiring, we have awards. So we have invited tonight some retirees that were able to make it, folks who are in their 25th year of service and folks who are in their 30th year of service. And those who were able to make it, we thank you for that and bringing your families. That is awesome. And then what we'll do starting tomorrow, we'll start here on the Square Barn, and our administrative team will go around to classrooms and hand out the other awards. So we spend the next 3 weeks on Friday doing that, going into the classroom, celebrating in front of the kids. So that is absolutely awesome. Speaking of celebrations, I got to slide this in here. It's my wife's birthday tonight. So you wanted to score happy birthday? Those are brownie points, right? Those are brownie points. All right. Well, also, it's Dr. McCrendle's birthday. So, happy birthday to Dr. McCrendle. Does anybody else have a May 4th birthday out there? Not like they were going to raise their hand at this point, but that's okay. So, hopefully my wife's watching. If not, we'll replay that on YouTube. Chris, you got that recorded, right? All right. Dr. McCrendle, your birthday doesn't fall on the board meeting night again until 2028.
Thank you.
Dr. Brzezinski is going to fact check on the calendar real quick on that probably. Just give me a nod if I was right, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're at. So we're going to start off with our 30 years of service. So everyone always wants to see what's in the boxes. So we've got that, planned that tonight. So for 30 years of service, careful for the 30 years, folks. These 2 pieces, so be real careful with that. So we're celebrating the 30 years. I know the mic's not picking me up. For those of you for 25, don't underestimate this. It is heavy. So it's our red apple that we hand out. And our retirees, that's for the board too, I guess, the red apple. We may have to redesign this one. The 3rd year, I'm going to drop that. And then our retirement tear drop that we've got going on. Everyone will get that tonight. And we also have certificates and pens. So first up, for 30 years of service, Diane Jewell. All right, Diane, we'll do hugs. Okay. All right, congratulations. Thank you for your service. So we have all of that there, the 2 pieces, the pen, and we also have a certificate. And I know you have the other goodies too, right?
I do. I said the apple when you showed it. I said it's very heavy.
All right. Thank you, Diane. Also, for 30 years of service, Scott Iddings.
You're trusting me with that?
So let's do the ceremony,
All right.
and we'll put it together later.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Yeah.
And,
Well, sure.
All right. Dr. McCrindle, Mr. Ernie and I had a duet for happy birthday. We didn't have time to put it together today, though, so maybe next time, 2028. 2028, Mr. Ernie? Will you be here?
I'm invited back.
We'll invite you back. All right, good deal. All right, so now we're going to move on to our 25 years of service. First up is Cindy Boderman. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your service. This is the heavy act. Yeah. Also 25 years, Jennifer Wilkinson. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Last time I came, I didn't bring it.
25 years of service, Chris Carnes. I didn't know who to look at. 25 years of service, Emily Moore. Congratulations. 25 years of service, Robin Maxwell. We'll get it back. Yeah. 'em. We're going to move on to our retirees, so I'm going to ask some of our administrators to come up to the mic to say a few words about folks that are retiring from the district this year. And I'm going to invite Dr. Bazinski up first.
Not standing up here by myself, come on, please. This is Deb Kent. I'm not gonna make this through.
I got this.
This is Deb Kent. She may have only spent 8 years here, but it was 8 of the most impactful years in my career. Deb came to Huntley 158 in 2015. She was something of a lucky find for us. Having split her prior careers between corporate administrative and school technology roles, she was the perfect person to be the first administrative assistant for our technology team. She's been something of a utility player for us. When we needed her to take on administration of all things technology, she made it happen. When we needed her to provide technical support for staff, students anywhere around the district, she made it happen. When we needed her to coordinate the swap of about 1,500 Chromebooks in 3 days at 3 schools, she made it happen. Deb has always been willing to jump into any project, any amount of work, no hesitation, from day one. That has been a huge impact for our entire team. Not only is Deb retiring, but she was also recently selected as the District Office Staff Member of the Year and will be recognized tomorrow night by the foundation. We're thankful for the work and commitment that Deb has shown Huntley 158. Her 8 years of service here are the perfect crowning jewel on top of a career filled with laughter, fun, and all-around excellence. Thank you, Deb, for all that you have done.
We gave Deb her award earlier. We're not leaving her out, so she celebrated with her team a few months ago. Next, I'm going to invite Stephanie Mitchell. Stephanie's our principal at Heinemann Middle School.
They don't like the spotlight much. All right. So over here on my far left is Jill Lamb. She's been an employee of District 158 since 2004. The last 19 years, she served the district as a middle school literacy teacher at Heinemann. Throughout Jill's tenure at HMS, she's made substantial contributions to our district, from coordinating our 8th grade DC trip, several Culver's Dine and Share nights, from being team leader to coaching POMs and volleyball, and a myriad of club sponsors. But the thing that sticks out most to me about Jill is how she goes out of her way to know her students. Jill has a way to get to know her students by picking up extra supervision and substitution jobs throughout the building. When I asked her why she does those things, she told me it was to get to know her future students or to see her previous students. Not only does Jill go above and beyond for her students, she does for her colleagues too. She's built strong and trusting relationships with them. Jill, we've been incredibly lucky to have had you serve the district for the last 19 years. We're beyond thankful that you've committed to continuing to help support our DC 8th grade trips and to be tied to our community still. We wish you nothing but happiness in your next phase of life. All right. Next lovely lady I have here is Karen Zeiss. So Karen's been with the district for 17 years. Since 2006, she served in the role as a teacher assistant at Heinemann. Throughout Karen's tenure in the district, she's made it very clear that she wants to constantly seek new ways to learn and grow in an effort to support students. She's also always willing to step in and help teachers and staff whenever and wherever she's needed. Karen makes it a priority by going out of her way to support students and help them feel included in the classroom. Her positive attitude fosters an environment where students feel safe to take chances. Karen, we wish you nothing but the best in retirement, and we encourage you to stay in touch. We sincerely appreciate your service to the district for the last 17 years. Thank you.
I know.
We'll get to the building.
Should you tell me? I said, let's just hold it up together.
Yours is on display up here, to make sure.
Oh.
That's why.
Oh, that's why.
Jill Lamb just told me she's returning for lunch duty next year. That's what I heard. Hey. All right. Next up, we'll welcome Marcy Marzullo, principal at McCabe Elementary, to the podium.
Hi, good evening. I have 3 fabulous ladies with me today. We're going to go in alphabetical order. We'll start with Laura. Laura is completing her 32nd year as an educator. Woo, woo. She has worked at the old high school, Cheswick, Martin, and McCabe as a reading teacher. She's even worked 1 year as a half-day kindergarten teacher on a cart. Oh my goodness. Laura has encouraged her love of literacy with her students each day, and especially being a sponsor for the Young Authors Program. She cares for her students so much, she has even shaved her head for St. Baldrick. Huntley 158 has been very special to Laura because she even met her husband while teaching together. John. They met when he locked himself out of the building, and she had to let him in, but he has had the key to her heart ever since.
Well done.
McCaben will miss her dearly, as well as her positive morning music. All right. Sherry Kent, here we go. She is completing her 21st year in Huntley. She has been a first grade teacher at Cheswick and McCaben, but she must have been itching to retire, even though it hurts her to leave. Sorry, personal joke.
Oh, my God.
Sherry loves animals almost as much as she loves her students. She is even the duckling Pied Piper, guiding them out of the courtyard, through the gym, and out to freedom. Sherry plans on fostering puppies or helping at the animal shelter after her tenure here for her next adventure. Sherry has always gone above and beyond with her students, individualizing their instruction and supporting their social-emotional needs. Her team is going to miss her funny school stories and hopes that she reconsiders being added to their sublist in between all her travels. It has been a pleasure getting to know you and being in your room this year. Thank you, Sherry. All right. And Miss Shelley Montello. My goodness. She is completing her 22nd year in Huntley. She started off at LeGee and moved to McCaben, where she has served as a self-contained and special education resource teacher. Shelley is completely selfless and compassionately committed to her students. She will think of every single possible scenario, intervention, or strategy that will allow her students to be successful. Shelley is a model for all of us in perseverance and strength. Throughout all her challenges, she exudes positivity and consistently puts her students first, even when we've asked her not to. All of us have a special connection with Shelley. She has touched our lives in so many ways. Personally, I love how she used to teach at the school I was previously principal at, and she understands my professional background and has guided me through this transition to McCaben with grace. We all wish her great success and hope that she truly gets to relax and enjoy her next adventure in Arizona with her husband, son, daughter-in-law, and especially her granddaughter. We love you very much, Shelley.
Thank you. Thank you.
Laura Brummer, after working with your husband for a few years, I 100% believe that getting locked out of the building story.
Thought he was a high school student.
Please welcome Principal at Martin Elementary, Michelle Apple, to the podium.
All right, here I have with me Diane Newman. Diane has been in our district for 23 years, and she has been dedicated to not just Martin, but schools throughout. Diane has been an asset to our district. She's worked tirelessly to help students and impact countless children's lives over the 23 years here. So Diane started in 2020. I hope I have this all right. I had to do some research, Diane, so let me know. Yeah. I believe you started as a fourth grade teacher at South? At South. I'm not sure what South is. I haven't been here long enough to know, but there's obviously a building that was once called South. In 2000. Oh, 2000, yes, I'm sorry, 2000. Then she went to Cheswick, still a fourth grade teacher, as they were building some other schools here on campus. And then she taught fourth and fifth grade at Legee Elementary for about 15 years. So you were at Legee as well. Then you moved to Martin as an instructional coach for 3 years. Then she had to move up in grade levels a little bit. She went up to Heinemann as an instructional coach. And then we were lucky enough to have her back in our Martin team for the past 2 years as our MTSS interventionist. So we are grateful to have had her back right before she decided to move on. Diane has been a mentor and a role model to so many of our students, and her contributions to our district are felt by many. We will miss her greatly, and we are also excited for her as she embarks on that new chapter of her life. We are grateful, Diane, for your service here in our district, and we wish you all the best in your retirement from all of us at Martin and all of us here today. Thank you.
Did I miss anyone? Good, all right. We're gonna have everyone come up for a quick picture with the board. So if, everyone who was just recognized, please come up in front of the board here. And you'll get everyone arranged. That way.
Try not to.
Yeah, Mackenzie's
Jump right in.
I'm not doing a full on shot, can't stand that way.
You guys are elementary. We gotta coordinate and organize ourselves here for a photo. Mr. Redding is the principal, you're gonna take the lead, organize. Come on, put them in line.
We can be like that, where do we look?
Almost.
Okay, we're good. Can we go now?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Congratulations again.
I can't hold my stomach in that
And Laura, please tell Sean.
I will.
Really try to-
I will, absolutely.
All right, thank you very much for all your years of service here at District 158. This is a wonderful display to see of all the folks who are committed to helping and teaching our kids. With that, we move on to number 4, public comment. I don't have any.
You guys don't have anything?
All right, so with no public comment, or if anybody would like to make something, we can go through that. We'll move on to revision and adoption of the agenda. So, motion to adopt the agenda as presented, or if there's any changes that need to be made to the agenda.
I'll second the motion to approve the agenda.
We have a second for Mr. Quagliano. So if we can do a voice call, it says.
Yeah.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
All, not in favor? All right, the motion, passes. We will move forward and, approve the agenda as it is. So we will start off with the Finance, Committee. So, Mr. Quagliano?
All right, Finance Committee, I'm just gonna make a brief comment on our Finance Committee. I know we went through some committee decisions on Tuesday. We had kind of some light consensus on stuff, and we've kind of reordered things a little bit. And just, not to make a huge deal out of it, but Mr. Troy's not here. Feel I need to speak up for Mr. Troy and Mr. Craddy, who were both, I think, strong considerations for this committee. And I felt based on, their unique qualifications that either one of them should have probably been selected for this committee. And it's, President's privilege to make those calls. I respect that. I was not perfect in my selections, and I respect that, but I do feel it's important that I don't feel this committee is, aligned correctly with the talent pool that's available. So, say about that. We'll move on to payables. Mr. Altmeyer is away at a conference, so he won't be here, but I'll lead us through. We have our purchase orders, our express checks, our accounts payable, and disbursements that are laid out in those 4 PDFs. I know we have, again, new board members, and I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions on what each of those items represent, that maybe it gets asked today so that, there's some clarity on what that stuff represents. But with each one of those PDFs, they do explain what they are, whether they're POs, I believe, or items that have been previously part of the budgeted process and are already in place, and they're just being presented because they're getting paid. The impress checks are, I believe, more current items, AP, and similar, and disbursements, I believe, are reimbursements that occur for various things. So if anybody, again, newer board, just want to make sure if there's any questions from either the committee or the rest of the board, if anybody has any questions concerning those items.
Mr. Quagliano, how many students do we have in outplacements that we pay tuition for?
Me personally, I would not know that number. Does anybody have a clue on that, administrative wise?
Come up to the podium. Make sure the green light's on.
Hi, good evening. We have roughly 30 to 35 students that are currently off-base, but that fluctuates based on reintegration.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple questions about some specific ones.
Yeah.
That you probably don't know the answer to, but Mr. Altmeyer's not here, so I'll get them just for the minute.
We'll put it out, yeah.
There was a $44,000 to a company called Build Capacity Consulting. Wasn't sure what that was for. I looked up a website. It looked like it was under construction. Didn't know exactly what it was. And then there was $24,000 to a company called Frank Cooney Company for furniture for the fiscal department. I didn't know.
I can speak to the Frank Cooney Company. When we had a flood in the district office a number of months ago, and the upstairs was impacted heavily. We made the decision at the time to go beyond what the insurance covered in the fiscal office. It was due for new carpet and an upgrade anyway. So that is over and above what the insurance would cover in terms of finishing the carpeting from what was not damaged and getting cubicles that are uniform throughout the office area. I believe their furniture was original with this building and upwards of 20 years old.
Thank you. Anything on the Build Capacity Consulting?
I am not familiar with that. We'll dig in and find out.
Ms. McCardle?
Okay, that's part of our math professional learning that we're doing for our teachers. And so that consultant broke off of her original company, which was Math Institute of Wisconsin. And we've had great success with her, so we're continuing with her partnership. That was approved. I'll try to put the date. I believe it was the March
Okay.
meeting.
I remember the Math Institute of Wisconsin stuff,
Yes.
so That's,
person, different company.
it was a weird name.
Yes.
It didn't jump out as education, so
Yes.
I wasn't sure.
Changed our affiliation.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions on those 4 items? Questions? If not, committee-wise, are we comfortable with pushing these forward to the board for approval?
I am.
Michael, are you good? Yeah. Okay, well, we'll push those forward. Again, that's procedurally wise by the committee. We generally, when we're pushing it out, we're gonna put it on consent unless somebody wants to say, here, leave it off consent, but we'll have further discussion at the board meeting. It does not preclude, even if it goes on consent, it doesn't preclude us at the board meeting pulling it off consent and having further discussion on it. So clarity on procedurally what happens with that. So we'll move those 4 items forward to the board sent for the next meeting. Item 6.2 is the monthly fiscal updates. Mr. Altmeyer is not there, but he has a memo in place. Do we have any questions concerning the items that he's listed in his monthly fiscal updates? In our further in our finance committee, we have our March monthly financial statements. So he lists as the first item, we have a budget and 5-year plan. So he had presented at the last board meeting his first draft of the budget and 5-year plan. We did not spend a lot of time going through that in detail because I didn't feel it was, I wanted to wait till this board was in place before we had any detailed discussions on our budget, because it didn't make sense to have the outgoing board members discussing an item that they're not gonna press. So,
I believe the second draft will come in June, where that detailed conversation
right,
can occur.
right, which is fine. It should be a much more detailed, deeper dive concerning that. Anybody has any comments concerning that? Items we probably need to line up and talk about items we want deeper dives on, maybe budget line items that might be in question as other sources. Again, we can put something together to have Altmeyer be prepared for individual meeting.
Yep, I think that'd be good.
We're all good with that. Okay. Medicare, Medicaid is on here. I don't know that I can address anything specific to that. But I know, I had a conversation with Mr. Altmeyer today at his conference, and he actually presents to his IASBO group on some of these esoteric reimbursements that are out there. I mean, he's extremely well versed in explaining to other CFOs the opportunities they have, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare. Again, difference, Medicaid is usually more of a state-based program. Medicare is more of a federal-based program, to my knowledge. And just the various different types of special ed reimbursements that are out there that he's kind of plugged into, that a lot of people in his profession sometimes aren't. So I think he's pretty well versed on that. And if anybody has any items they want to discuss in the future, he's a good source for how are we taking advantage of available reimbursements in those areas. ECC-based stipend increase, have something, obviously, it's the extracurricular committee. You want to?
Sure. So in the last contract, the board and the NHEA agreed to a base stipend increase of giving a pot of money to the extracurricular committee for them to kind of self-govern. And that pot of money can increase if activities come off the books, or there's a base amount they can put it to either funding new activities or increases based on the need and student involvement, adding a coach here, adding a coach there. And I believe he's recommending that, it's working very well. It has been a very positive thing, giving ownership to one of our, joint committees with HEA. So I believe that he's just updating that it's going really well and that they've allotted those increases.
Right, and that's all presented. I mean, these will be presented at our board meeting.
They will. It'll be a separate action item, at the May, it won't be on consent.
Okay. The next item I can actually address.
He'll be able to go into detail about what, the specificity of what they changed and they're adding to.
Right. Right. Before I move on to the next item, any questions on that extracurricular committee? It was embedded into the HEA contract, last negotiations, and how this would be worked out. So I think it's an example of, you know, how we want to work with our collective bargaining units to come to a mutually desirable outcome on items that we have to address together. So, like I said, the next item I can address directly, the parameters resolution. And so this is because the board has turned over. We've had this standing parameters resolution for the last several months, where we had authorized, at the time it was myself and Kevin Gentry, to act on behalf of the board on a matter concerning our possible opportunity to refinance these 2014 bonds. Again, pretty mundane stuff, but the bond market has been very, you know, interest rates have gone up. The opportunity to kind of refinance this little piece, and kind of our last piece, has been out there, but the rates have not made it very conducive to act. It's we kind of, in our minds, had set that at a minimum, we want to save between $200,000 and $250,000 of savings by going ahead and taking action. And so this is a type of item where, again, where action, it doesn't necessarily, you know, board meetings don't suit the timing of where we might need to act quickly at times. So this is a type of resolution where, whether it's bonds or Mr. Troy in the past has acted on behalf of the district for some commodity, you know, items that fixing in rates on utilities and stuff. So this is an action where the rest of the board allows an individual or two on the board to act on their behalf in these matters. And so he's just making the point, we're going to have to, if desired by the full board, we're going to have to take action as this board to provide for that authorization. Okay, and it's probably best to have a couple people do it. Like I said, it was myself and Mr. Gentry who were kind of plugged in. The update I'll give you is I know we've gone to the trouble of getting our rating with, so it was Moody or S&P, and it was, you know, it was a double A plus, I think. It was a good rating, but that rating is only good for like the next 90 type of thing, and that occurred, I think, within the last 30 days. So it was a very small opportunity at the time that was kind of within our window, and it closed very, very quickly. So we didn't and weren't able to act on it at the time. So I think it's just something we should strongly consider going forward, having that kind of authorization for a couple of us to act for the district if their timing is right. Because I mean, I think you're aware the bond market is kind of in this stage of where it's depending on what's going on. We just had rates increase, and the bond rates have moved up a little bit from where they had receded downward. So I personally don't have a good feel for how quickly things are going to move. So I can't really predict very well, but like I said, I think if we stick to the idea of here, we're willing to save X amount of money, work within those parameters that we agree as a board, and then there's a couple people that can act and get this executed. The timing presented. So
Makes sense.
okay. Any other further questions concerning that item? EPA and Volkswagen grant opportunity for propane in our electric buses. I have no, deal, I have no idea what that is, probably a Mark thing.
Yeah, Kevin, if you're looped in on it or not, I'm not up to speed on that. We'll just wait and let him update us in May if you have specific questions on it. But there's more information that still has to come. I think he's just saying that,
This is out there.
it's coming out there and he's gonna dig in and learn about it.
Yeah, it's just exploring. Right, these other items on his specific tasks to address and coming up in July, I think, they're both forward enough that I don't, unless somebody has a question on them, I don't have anything to really address or have any concerns on those items right now at this time, so. If not, move off of the updates. There is, along with this monthly fiscal update, we are provided once a month the activity funds of the district, and there are many. If you clicked into that, you see there is a laundry list of activity funds that operate at all of our buildings for all of our student activities and all kinds of clubs. The summary of that activity is contained in this report, and a little bit of highlighting and details are done also with that report. So there's a lot of stuff always going on. I think there's a person within our fiscal office that's like dedicated to just going through all these internal funds that occur and the disbursements that go out. There's quite a few funds that exist. So is there any questions related to those items? No. Okay. Right, so then 6.3 is our revenue and expenditure report that Mr. Altmeyer has provided. He always gives a summary at the top of what's going on through March. I think for the most part, again, through March, we're fiscal year is June, so we're 75% through the year, and you can kind of look at his percentages on the side to kind of see. Again, this isn't, the district isn't necessarily a static, business from the standpoint that expenses get incurred. The salaries and benefits do mostly follow that pattern, okay? And so you can kind of gauge from that where we're at on those two big ticket items. But purchase services, supplies and materials, capital outlay, those are very specific to certain times, usually very much in the beginning of the year and then very much at the very end of the year is where those two types. So you'll see that their purchase services is way above, but it's because most of that stuff occurred earlier in the year, type of thing. And less of it happens later. But the opposite occurs with these other items. They occur typically in the months of May and June when the school's empty and we're doing things and we're stocking up or doing improvements. Those ramp up and get into their budgetary outlays normally at that time. So, I don't know if there's any on the summary part of it, if there's any questions related to that as to where we're at so far through March. Personally, there's nothing there that alarms me, other than when we get a little further in the report and we get to our get into some of the detail on our benefits. And our benefits, the main item, there's a March 23 financial executive summary. And in that executive summary is always on a monthly basis our insurance update, and our insurance, self-insured, those items fluctuate at times from month to month pretty significantly, but we're 3/4 of the year third on this report, and we are for the first time in a long time trending over budget. We have generally been very fortunate to come in under budget most years. This last few months has been significant in claims, and we are at a point where we're, if we kept on this $1 million plus train that's been going on, we'll be over budget on that item, and it's a significant line item, so it is a cause for some concern. We're $1.5 million or so away with 3 months left. not faring as well as we're used to seeing.
In the past years, when we were under budget,
Yeah.
did we keep that into a pool or an accrual?
So that's really good. There is a reserve, that exists, for it. I think further down in this report, it's in the balance sheet cash flow, which is in like the fourth page of this report. And currently that self-insurance reserve is at $2.487 million. Okay, and I think it's pegged to be at a certain percentage of what we're generally incurring. So I think it was pegged in that 20%, to kind of absorb, bad year like.
You're gonna have good years, you're gonna have bad years.
100%, 100%. So, but it's the question important. I mean, I don't know that every school district who's self-insured has that kind of reserve fund set up. And it is something that Mr. Allmeyer insisted on, several years ago, that we build that up and funds there in case we, ran it in 2 years. And again, just very quickly, without getting too much in the weeds here, on our self-insurance, we do have stop losses, so that we don't have unlimited exposure on any individual. We have, and I can't remember if it's 125,000 or a little bit more than that, 150. A little bit more than that. Yeah, it's probably 150, yeah, 150, but we do have stop loss limits where secondary insurance that stops the loss. So any questions or concerns related to our revenue and expenditure report? So that was my only, the expenditure side, the revenue side, the Medicaid, and IDA, Roman Board, he color codes this. Those two items are lagging in receipt, and they typically do lag in receipt. It generally takes a while to get the reimbursements, more towards the end of the year. With that, we would have to ask Mr. Allmeyer if he's concerned that ultimately whether those two line items are in danger of not meeting their budget. I'm doing 100% to where his claims are in comparison to receipt. I think there's just a lag in collection. So those are the items that I see to highlight in that report. So if there's any questions, try and answer them. I can move on to the last item that is on finance, which is the revenue contract. And so we have one revenue contract that's before us, and it's for the Heinemann Library. And it says the vendor is Country Meals. It's a $1,000 type of fundraiser. So, are there any questions concerning that fundraiser? Issues with it? Nope. Okay, if not, then if everybody's okay with that, I will move that forward to the board for consent at our next meeting. With that ends finance. Building and grounds, so Mr. Troy's not here. I'm tired of speaking already, so Mr. Troy, I'm going to leave you with that.
All right, 7.1 O&M updates. Kevin, you.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to sit in tonight for Mr. Ronkowski. As you see in front of you, there is a recap of what's going on in the O&M department. A lot of these are slated to kick off this summer, so not much really to update on them yet. There is 4 or 5 things I'd like to highlight in here. Number one is the continued coordination towards completing the closeout of Phase 4 roof project, the high school last year. This will not be completed until the East Gym has been refinished. And you ask, how is the East Gym tied into the roof? Well, during the project last year, there was a leak and did a little damage to the gym floor. So we're holding the contractor accountable for his damages. So that won't be closed down until that's complete this summer. Next thing I'd like to highlight is 3A. This is the electric bus fleet project going on here at the district office. Two things, we're excited about this one. The electrical equipment finally showed up for the temporary stage, island out back. So that's been wired up, and the company told me they're gonna come do the charging stations next week to wire those up. And the final thing on that is the Village of Algonquin voted to approve to move forward with the solar project that's tied in electric bus fleet. Next thing I'd like to highlight is 3B, which is the Guaranteed Energy Savings Contract for the DX cooling job at Marlow Middle School. This is a big project. The equipment is in stock at the supplier's facility, and they look to kick that off as soon as school's out of session. Next thing would be 3G, the backstop netting project for the varsity baseball and softball fields. We have, that job is 95% complete. We're waiting on the payment and performance bonds from the contractor on that to close that job out. I don't know if you guys have been out there. It's a really nice looking setup.
Is it? Great.
Yeah. One more thing on this, update of this I was looking to highlight is 3J, the community solar project, the Lake in the Hills Committee of the Whole. The board voted to move forward with that project at the April 27th board meeting. So that project is a go for the community solar. So exciting stuff going on. As you can see, we're going to be busy this summer. There's a lot going on, but like I said, there's a lot that hasn't kicked off yet on this list. Waiting for school to get out. Any questions on 7?
Yeah, just is our phase 5 roof replacement at the high school, is that our last phase? Tell me it is, please.
Unfortunately, no.
We got
But
another
we
phase?
have more phases, yeah. There's more to do. It's a big roof.
It is a big.
11 acres under roof out there.
Good,
A lot of phases.
all right. Just I couldn't remember if we're almost finally done.
Yeah.
Been doing roofs for,
Forever. As long as I've been here, 12 years.
okay.
Any other questions for around O&M updates? Hearing none, moving.
So, one second, are we gonna talk about the change notice? Okay, I thought he said all the others.
No, that was just the update. The change order's next.
All right, moving on to 7.2, change order number 1 to roof system replacement bid number 2022-68.
So this is tied to the Phase 4 roof project at Huntley High School. On here it says Phase 3, but I believe that's a typo. During construction, this is the typical process of the job, is items are discovered, wet insulation, several areas, I believe 30 sheets of wet insulation. So this is, along with additional credit getting back from the contractor for background checks, this change order is for replacing that wet insulation. So the administration recommends the Board of Education to approve change order number 1 in the amount of $10,570.30. The next board meeting. Any questions on the typical process of the job? You're gonna find stuff.
I don't have a question about the change notice amount, but the contract sum appears to be $410,000, being added to it, so we probably want to get that corrected.
So,
That's correct unless I'm
so
misunderstanding.
back to my O&M updates. Number 1, this is the same roofing project where they damaged the floor. That's why we're holding that money, to hold them accountable to repair the gym floor.
So I get what you're asking. The 989, 695.30, well, less the 10,570.38 was actually the full original contract, is that correct? And we're trying to follow the fact that the original contract shows 579, 125, and
looks like a typo.
It does look like a typo, I'm not sure who.
It actually is.
Who did the math there?
It should just be a 5.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
I think that someone was going to ask me to sign it, and I didn't want to sign it
No,
for that,
yeah.
so.
Good catch. Any questions on change order number 1?
I guess the question would be is do you want to move that to a separate action item to review that again, or are you comfortable with it being in consent after reviewing it ahead of time and leaving it on the consent agenda, as long as the typo's fixed? It can be consent and then signed off.
I would put it in consent contingent upon it being corrected to the right amount.
I think that's the right move. I just want to be sure that you were clear on what we're asking.
Yeah, it's just a minor typo, it should be 6.
A big typo.
Good catch.
All right. Any more questions on that? If not, 7.3, alarm monitoring service contract.
This is our alarm monitoring service contract. It's a 5-year contract. The current contract is expiring May 6th of this year. We are looking to sign another 5-year contract at the same cost, no upcharge. 5-year contract for upgrading the burglar alarm wireless communication and monitoring service for the next 5-year term. We're looking to have the Board of Committee recommend the Board of Education move forward with this. It's $9,612 for this 5-year contract. This is for our fire alarm and burglar alarm monitoring service.
Do we do any price competition here to look at it? Because they're monitoring the alarms that are in the building, right?
Correct. It's a dial-out system through our
Existing vendor, right?
existing vendor, Fox Valley Fire. I'm pretty sure Doug and I did do research on this, and we thought they're not raising the prices, staying consistent for the next 5 years. It was a good deal to go with.
And you're happy with the service that Fox Valley provides?
Yep.
They're a good partner.
For the monitoring service, correct.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, we'll look to move all those forward to the board meeting in 2 weeks. All right, I will kick it over to Mr. Bittman for Policy Committee.
All right, with the policy committee, there's a couple things here attached. Dr. Rowe, do you want to talk through the policy packet?
Sure. So at first, just to maybe educate our new board members what PRESS is. PRESS is a kind of an umbrella service that we subscribe to through the Illinois Association of School Boards that props up the policy that we adopt. And these updates are updated footnotes and legal supports. And the common theme that flows throughout is a new law that we're preparing for in the HR office, which is the employment history review. And a lot of the legal background that is supporting that policy, which will require us to go back in any new hire, contact prior employees to make sure they have not been accused and investigated of sexual misconduct or harassment in their history. So there's a lot going into that. That's primarily the theme. The majority of the packet is legal references and updates. Any specific questions, we're happy to answer.
I guess in general, when you do that, I'm trying to think of how my company would respond to that, and I'm not sure how it would respond. Do companies actually say whether there's been an issue? Because a lot of times
So that's one of the questions, Mr. Bittman. Obviously, when you're checking, there's some gray that needs to be ironed out in state law. The intent, fantastic. Obviously, let's give an example. We'll hire someone from a neighboring district. We would send the ISB forms. We're actually going to use a company called Verifent is going to assist us with this. And so we would have a portal that we go into. They would enter that information and it would go, school districts have to follow this because it is in school code. Now, if we're looking at someone who was, formerly employed in the private sector, they may look at that and go, we don't have to follow it, and so we may not get a response from those folks. So how the language reads right now in the law is that the process needs to be started. That's where we're going to run into, some issues maybe in that private world that they don't return it or they have a policy that, they don't fill that out or something along that nature. But a lot of gray area in terms of, we know it has to be former employees where there was direct supervision of children. We're also interpreting some of it, it needs to be all former employees. So we are going to err on that side as we go forward, and it'll be all the former employees that are listed. But you're right, in that private sector, we may not get anything back, or we may get a response back that, you know, they don't share that type of information. I don't think it'd be something to be concerned on our side, because on top of that, we're also doing the reference check process too. So we're making those phone calls and checking up on references also.
Do we do a background check as well?
Yeah, so in our office in HR, we do state of Illinois and FBI fingerprinting.
We're required by law, right?
Yep.
So if you had somebody coming from the private sector and you got the letter back or the phone call back that said, we don't provide that kind of information, that wouldn't preclude us from hiring?
Not necessarily, no. That's some of the things, Scout, that needs to be, you know, ironed out as they go through this law. I don't think this is the last thing we'll see from press in terms of face law. As it starts up July 1st, you know, there's going to be feedback that comes from, you know, superintendents, boards, you know, lobbyists, what have you, to iron some of the gray areas out, if you will. And so we'll greatly appreciate that in my office, because if it would say complete, you got 20 days to get this back, but we are concerned about, you know, that private sector that doesn't have to follow school code. So.
And I guess if a school district comes back and says there was an incident, does that automatically disqualify them?
Then automatically, but we would probably dig into that a little bit more, and probably in our eyes.
Okay, and that makes sense to me. I know that on the business side, the state of Illinois is actually saying that even if you're convicted with a felony, we can't actually use that against for a hiring reason. So I didn't know, I mean, obviously if there's kids involved, hopefully that precludes it and you have a little bit more of a say with that.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we would take a stance on that. We'd obviously get our board attorney involved into to evaluate, you know, what's coming back. But from my seat, if we get a form back like that, I would discuss that with the superintendent, but I would be very hesitant.
And that makes sense.
All right, the inference is the fact that the state passed this law and require you to do this.
Yep.
I mean, it's almost, they're telling you need to do them from
I agree. I just know that the other side of the law is saying the opposite.
Yeah, what gets tricky with it, there's a 20-day period, and as we get into August and we have to make some, you know, some late tight hires, hopefully districts will be very responsive to this because it's on everyone's radar, but it does, you know, extend that hiring process a little bit. But the portal we're going to go into has some automatic reminders that get sent, has a button that we can push. So if you're trying to get that information, we can get a little bit pushy, I guess is the best way to describe it. And also, you know, we can then pick up the phone too, because we want this information back so we're in compliance. So it's going to be interesting as we hit July 1st and districts start, you know, passing this stuff around. And, you know, when it says direct supervision of children, if you were, you know, a nanny, if you worked for the YMCA, you know, things of that nature, you know, it's expected to be listed on there and that information to be sent. So.
Just one more question, sorry. In terms of where you check, are you using the resume or is there like a registry or something like that you can
Good question.
verify that?
There's two things folks use to apply to us. So we have an online application. So how face law is reading right now, you know, if it's out of state, we hope they list that. So here's all the questions, right? If they don't list, you know, they were in Texas at a school district. If they don't list that, we don't know.
Right.
Now, with the state of Illinois, we do know because our administrator side of what we call IWAS allows us to look up and see everywhere you've looked in the state of Illinois. So for school districts. So in that, we have to verify that with the school districts in the state of Illinois. But if they would, you know, exclude something from another state, obviously that could become an issue later too, because you're excluding something off of your application or resume. So we've got a few more steps. We do that anyway, you know, through verification. If someone lists, you know, they worked in, you know, a neighboring district for 4 years, we can see that in ISB on our side.
Okay, thank you. Are there other states that have this?
Yeah, we've received a few. you know, in my 8 years here, no, I want to say Michigan, some of the Northwest states, we've seen a few come in. So it'll be folks that have been gone from the district for a while. Maybe they're moving to another district in the state they're in. So, you know, those trickle in and, you know, we go through the personnel files and everything, especially if it's someone, you know, that it's been a while and we're not familiar with in my office. We're able to look through that to make sure there was nothing in that file.
Thank you. I mean, intention's the law.
Yeah, well, absolutely. The intention is fantastic. The logistics of it need to be ironed out, and we'll do that.
This just applies to new hires, correct, not existing hires?
Yeah. Right now, it just applies to new hires. I was in a seminar where there was a little bit of chirp that if someone would transfer a building, do you need to do that? And there was a very great answer from the attorneys hosting that, and I don't see why that would be necessary, because you would be, now, I think some districts that are much larger, like you get into, you know, a CPS or something like that, when they may not be as familiar, but that question was brought up about folks that transferred within the district. There is nothing right now that is making us go back on current employees.
Right.
Not right now.
Anything else, Dr. Rowe?
Nothing for me.
Perfect. I think we'll move on. Policy committee, curriculum and instruction. So I think that's Mike.
Item number 9.1, we have Ms. Lombard, who is going to present 2 resolutions that we're going to bring forward to the next board meeting.
So the first resolution, both of the items that fall under curriculum committee tonight are annual type things that we'll be bringing forward. The first is an extension to a current resolution that we have with our county regional faith school, Evergreen Academy. With that, what they provide a service for is for some of our students who maybe had challenges that were in the current or their current school setting for grade 6 through 12th grade. With that, most of the students are referred by the school. Maybe it's through an alternative to a suspension type, or could be an expulsion held in advance. But we also have had some parents who have worked with the school, typically at the high school level, saying this is not working for my student. Maybe they've had some discipline type situations, and it's been a voluntary referral. And so it doesn't just have to come from the school, it could come from the parents as well. Currently, the per diem or the charge to the district is $40 per day. There's a combination of funds from grants that the regional office may get, things that we have here. It's currently baked into the budget through some of our grants that are in the curriculum department. And so that would not change. And because of those things, about to know through communication with our regional office, they have lobbyists out trying to increase the funding for regional faith schools across the state of Illinois. And so with that, hopefully those things will increase to support the special needs that we do have for our students. The curriculum is very tailored for the need of the child. And so a lot of that they will work with our current, typically their high school, could be our middle school as well. And many of those things may be online types of programs. We've had students who have been interested in maybe something that the community college has offered, and working with high school administration, would that be positive for that student? And we work out busing, transportation, those kinds of things. With that also, there's supports depending on why that student was referred. That could be around substance abuse and supports for that. It could be around anger management. So again, very tailored to the reason that the student was referred in the first place. Parents do go on a tour with the school. There's an intake. They talk about all of those things to develop what that program can be. And there's that on and off ramp. So again, if they're meeting the needs and meeting the expectations or the goals of why they were referred to that school, then they would come back in and just get right back in the groove of where they were with that. Again, if it's for a reason for an expulsion where it's held in advance, there's usually that time frame is already set up, and those goals and whatnot are put in place as part of those parameters that are there. And again, it's been a great, resource for our students who just needed that little extra that we're not able to offer. The regional office has been a great partner, with that. And again, they're offering, this program to schools in our county. And again, the numbers that we refer there are very, very small on an annual basis. But again, they work very, very closely with our high school administration. And as students then come back, part of that intake process and whatnot has helped that transition to go very smoothly. Because again, it's in the county, we've got the same goals and things like that. So we are recommending that we just extend the resolution that's been in place for 20-something years. It's been a long time there, and so it's just a one page. But again, nothing changes. The cost is there, the services are there, and that collaborative approach with our region.
So pardon my lack of
Yeah.
familiarity with the specific subject,
Sure.
but is there a choice for our district if, for any reason that the Safe School became over capacity, or how many other districts are feeding into this? Do we have alternatives?
So there, definitely there are, all of the districts in the county can feed into that, not just high schools, typically it is, but middle school as well. And so, there was some discussion last year about reaching kind of the capacity of what their current resources were there, and maybe timeliness of that. And so we kind of all talked, what would we do in that situation? One of the things, with this, if we had a student with an IEP or a 504, and the reason for their referral was a manifestation, it was due to the disability, we wouldn't send there, so we would look at some of our out-of-district placements and facilities and find what best would meet their resources, and kind of give them all that support that they would need. So if we did come to that capacity, we do have schools in surrounding districts that have alternative programs as part of their district that we may be able to partner with. We would again have to bring an agreement together for those. Crystal Lake has one. There's a variety of different places that we could look at if either one, we felt that wasn't the best fit. Again, they've been great for the students that we have now, but change happens and things might come about. And so we would have to work together to do something like that and kind of tuition into some surrounding areas.
So in the existing agreement with Evergreen, if there was a need to go outside of their facilities for overflow reasons or whatever, you're saying that we would need to craft that separate agreement. There's nothing within the existing agreement that
I
would
don't
speak to
believe
that.
so, no.
The only thing that I would add to that, we've had instances where we've gotten creative with it, where it was, really close to the end of the school year, and going into Evergreen may not have made a lot of sense if there was like a month and a half left. So we've entered agreements for like American School in a very unique situation. There have been others where a family has petitioned to go to a private school instead, and we've entered into, again, very unique circumstances where we've allowed for that. But again, if we entered in an agreement with another school district to use theirs, we probably at minimum would revert to the state tuition requirement, which would be more expensive by a few $1,000s if that's what they charged than this agreement. So financially, this makes sense. And like I said, we've had success with students going in and reintegrating back. It's a good service that our county provides.
So it's something that we could pivot easily if need be.
It is. I think it's still our first recommendation in most cases, but we have been creative given circumstances that are, because every situation creates some unique circumstances that we have to look through.
Sure.
And sometimes they present interesting situations that we have to be creative.
Very good. Thank you.
Dr. O, thanks for bringing up that one example. If it's dependent on the length, it was a couple of weeks before the end of the semester, that would be a discussion we would have, looking at it. We could probably serve best so it didn't impact the courses that they were in, providing that support. And so definitely there's options out there, but this is our first choice, so.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions or comments regarding this?
I got a couple.
Sure.
So I guess I misunderstood what the use case of this is. Is this for longer term alternative education, or is this kind of something happens, we know we need to provide them education and we move them there quickly, like in the terms of a longer term suspension?
I think I would add, but I think the answer to your question is we use the regional safe schools most commonly when we utilize it in an expulsion situation. So if a student is going to be expelled, instead of expelling them for whatever period of time or 2 years, the board, for as long as I've been here and many years prior to that, has held that in abeyance, meaning if you agree to attend the regional safe school, if you complete it and reintegrate successfully, we will expunge the expulsion from your record. As long as so you can continue your education as planned and don't step foot on our property for the period of time, we'll waive the expulsion on your record. That's how it's been used in years past. There have been a couple of circumstances during my time here where we've worked with families and they've elected to go there because our environment, they weren't being successful and we were heading down a bad path. And there's been an optional attendance there, but in 99% of the time, it's an expulsion being held in debate.
Okay.
So the requirement for referral would be one of three things. We typically, as we said, utilize that for the expulsion or that expulsion held in advance. Other districts may use it for suspension. The student has been suspended at least twice for a period of anywhere from 4 to 10 days for gross misconduct. And so again, that's probably where that on and off ramp could be. They're there, they need some intense support, but maybe it's only for a set time. They've got some of that support and then are ready to integrate back in. Or that involvement of misconduct, which demonstrates that long pattern of behavior and it's on and off there. Typically at that time, that's where that parent may come forward and say, is there an option for us to try something different? They may not know about necessarily this school, but what else is there? ALOP might be an option for them, or it might be this if it's more that behavior component. And so, yes, historically we've used it for a longer period of time for that expulsion, but it could be used if that's what the student needed for a short period.
And transportation for students is on us.
Yeah, so students can't drive there. It's either the parent would drive or we provide the transportation there.
And it has nothing to do with this particular issue, but in terms where after 4 days, 4-day suspension, we have to provide education, where do we typically go?
If it's after 4, so say.
I think that's the rule. After 4 days, we have to provide some sort of alternate education opportunity.
So with that, and kind of discipline, right? So we're going to do an out-of-school suspension. We're going to remove them from that environment. Days 1, 2, and 3, we have a little bit more flexibility for that, but we've got to show that something is, we've tried some other interventions. Sometimes an intervention, I might not know, I'm going to get used to this, I might not know that Mrs. Stoss is going to have a certain behavior, and we might not know that an intervention was needed there. And so we might not have those pieces. For anything over 4 days, we need to show what interventions we have tried in the school, why they're not working, and then we show that it's a continued disruption or a continued threat to the learning environment. And so sometimes some of those behaviors are like, yep, she did this. Is it going to be probable that this is going to be that continuous? If it's not, we need to try some of these other things. So we've had students who have had a suspension, anything up to 10 days we can do, anything over that's called an expulsion. So if we said it was going to be 11 days, it was going to be the rest of the semester that year, that's where we would be bringing that to the board. There'd be a hearing and all of those pieces. So anything from that 4 to 10 days, what we would be working with is the students still staying in the program. They're not at school, but we would provide homebound tutoring where we would give so many hours per week, where typically it's somebody from that school in that subject area, but we do have some of our substitutes who also like that homebound part. They've been doing that for a while. So during that time, they are out of school, but we are still educating them with our curriculum. It's just through supports that we would do for homebound. If they did have an IEP or again 504, we would provide some of those services. If it was again tied to their disability, and be giving those pieces maybe in the library or homebound or something like that.
Okay.
So 4 to 10, it's us through the tutoring type.
Okay, so then for the 4 to 10, we typically take it on ourselves to do that.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, this question's going to sound even a little bit more strange. Is there a similar type of school, because this is only 6 through 12?
Yeah.
And it's weird even asking this, but K through 5? Is there something like that in the county that?
Yeah, so not through, the regional. We do have some of our students who are having more of those behavior, pieces. We would have gone through the majority of our situations, right? We may have something totally different tomorrow, but, where we would be working through our, MTSS process, working closely with, our special services, and maybe if a student was having, we're trying the continuum of support, and then it may end where we are looking for a placement out of the district to meet those needs. So it's a little bit different. We have not brought a student at the elementary level forward for expulsion, in my time yet, and hopefully not, because again, there's supports and interventions we can do. We do know that there are some neighboring districts who do have something that's more at that elementary level, and, again, if need be, we could look at working and doing some type of a partnership with them if we got to that, type of, situation. But hopefully, the things that we have through our NTSS process are really working for our elementary students. But as you know, we have seen an uptick of behaviors from the early ages. And so this will be something that we need to monitor and look at. If it's something we can't intervene here and support here, of course, we're going to want to get the student help in another.
If we find ourselves in a position where we're looking at a different learning environment for, especially an elementary student, the likelihood that they're going to have gone through the MTSS process and then been evaluated and an IEP has been issued, that's most likely the scenario that it will go. Therefore, there are therapeutic day schools in the Chicagoland area that are only for students with IEPs. Being in a position where we may be looking for an alternative placement for a student without an IEP would be very extreme at the elementary level. The only things that I've seen students expelled for in my 12 years have been weapons and drugs.
Hopefully, we're not seeing that.
Well, hopefully not, but I think that's the point. It is what Ms. Lombard is talking about. The supports and the interventions lead to typically an IEP, and then we do have some of our elementary students who are currently outplaced that would not come before the board for an expulsion. That would go through, the IEP team would make a placement decision.
Mr. Brickman, we've talked about that the student behaviors have increased at the earlier ages. And so there's a lot of discussions with a variety of our departments and our school buildings to look at, are there different programs right now that we might need to, even if it's a short time, again, that on and off ramp, or could be for a year or two, that we may need to look at having in our district, right? It may be in all of our buildings, it might just be in a few. So there is a lot of discussion going on with that. Many years ago, we had a transitional kindergarten program, again, not necessarily for behaviors, but it was that bridge from ECC into kindergarten where they needed more of that academic support and some of those components. Based on the programs that we have to meet the needs, that was dissolved a number of years ago. But is there a structure of something like that that we could do at our elementary levels that might not meet the criteria of, okay, it's an IEP and needs there, but it's addressing those behaviors that we're seeing frequently?
Thank you, appreciate it.
And for the record, we're exhausted all of the ideas that I have for behavioral interventions with Mrs. Stock. So if you have any suggestions,
Okay, sure. Thank you for letting me pick on you tonight. I didn't have anybody to my other side, so.
Oh,
Not sure that's going to get in the minutes.
Mrs. Stock, you didn't see that coming. Keep that light over here, please. I'm gonna get pinched for that.
Wait till later. There you go.
So that doesn't require a vote, correct? This is being recommended for,
The ad hoc committee would recommend that it would go on to consent agenda at the regular next meeting.
And then I'll include that resolution for signature. I believe this one would be from the board president as well as the board secretary, and then we'll get that all sent out to the regional office.
Very good.
Right, so you, Michael, as the chair, and it's just I have as Gallagher, you two are making a decision of doing it.
Okay.
well, as long as we have you on the ropes.
Sure. Okay, so this one I might phone a friend. So Dr. Beelan, if there's some of the specific questions, be paying attention. Okay. So last month we brought forward an agreement for our Partner for Prevention when we're looking at our random drug screens as part of the IHSA extracurricular and athletics. One of the pieces that we're bringing forward annually now is that other component, same partner for interventions. We've worked with them since 2015. I believe it's 2015. Dawn, it's her company, is a certified alcohol and drug counselor. And so this contract that's in front of you is the exact same as it was last year. The year before, maybe some changes with cost, but it has been, we increased the numbers last year, and nothing else changed for this year with that. Again, there was a need for more intense drug and alcohol counseling support for our students. And Dawn has a great reputation with the school district. Dr. Rowe, you were there when she was working in there, really works well with our staff. And again, the outside random drug screening used to be with Northwestern. After the pandemic and closures, they weren't pushing back into the school for that resource. And so she took that on for us this year, which really streamlines it. If something were to pop in a result there, she's able to provide those services through this component. So what you're going to see in this is the contract is for 1,015 hours. It's billed at $75 per hour, and that is divided that she would be charging us for a per month. What is that amount? Is $6,343.75. Again, the same as last year. Referral process for this can come from the school, but we have also had parents reach out referring for additional support services there. They can be referred at any time. And again, like I said, that need has required us to increase this. This has been written into a few of our grants through the curriculum department, again, because it is such a need and a support for our families and our students. It does not have to be related to school discipline. It may be for other reasons that students or families or even teachers are noticing things and referring. Students who are found in possession with some type of a illegal substance, they're automatically referred. Now, being referred doesn't mean that they're going to accept and the parents are going to say, yep, let's move forward. Sometimes that first offense might be, let's work on it at home, let's try this piece of that, and down the road, maybe that referral is, but because of that increase in hours, you'll know that there are many families who support this and really want to get the assistance. So Dawn works with the student and the family for an in-depth intake and makes those recommendations for treatment. So they kind of set up something with regular check-ins, their screening and all of those on a regular basis. They can elect to meet with her during the school day at the school or for office outside of school hours. The counselors and social workers check in with the students so they kind of collaborate with Dawn as that specific alcohol and drug counselor, but then they can support and tie in at the same time. And then meets monthly with our student services team to kind of talk about, again, support things that maybe she is seeing or working with the family on that might not be something our staff are seeing, and then maybe that's going to go down that process for IPS and looking at other supports or interventions that we can offer in the school. Everything's very confidential. We know numbers and all of those things about pieces here, but again, it has been a great service. There may be other things outside of here that parents are looking for that she can tie them into other resources or other costs that may be over and above this. Dr. Beelen, anything you want to share about that I'm trying to do the highlights there?
Hey, good evening. Shortly, kind of as the pandemic took place, we were in the process of really looking at our data for substance abuse amongst our students. We would take the Illinois Youth Survey, and that survey would come back in the late spring, going into the next school year, where we would look at that data, and we started to see where some of those trends were. And so some of the deficits that we started to see were not just in the fact that students are using it, how do we get them connected to her services, but additionally how we can do parent education. So we used some of those hours, especially as the pandemic hit. We didn't back down off of hours. We actually ramped hours up. There were more Zoom calls with clients. both from parents who have reached out and for students that we were referring who started to use, especially during the pandemic. Middle school principals reached out as well, saying, hey, what are we doing? Because they're starting to see kind of some of that increase in students using there as well. And so we then used additional hours that we had left from the high school in her contract to then start to stem down to the middle schools. And then when she got there and realized how much of a benefit it was for even some of our middle school families, really trying to work on that preventative piece, because the freedoms that they get once they come to the high school in terms of time and their travel to and from school and with certain groups and so forth, we wanted to try and be as more preventive as possible. So we upped some of the hours, created some of the parent education, which is why there was an increase. If you look back over the years, in the 5 years that I've been here, I think we started at like 25,000 in the budget that was contracted out through the high school, and we wrote it into grants and saw a significant increase in dollars to that position because of the services that she was providing. That's a position that's hard to find.
Yeah.
You can't, I don't know how that's replicated in schools. It's like a diamond in the rough.
Yeah. So, in the hours that are specified in the existing agreement, it's maxed out at that level with a provision to go over if necessary.
So she does a very good job at making sure that she works back and kind of budgets the hours accordingly. Typically, she would work with families to get them to additional resources if necessary. If there was a need for additional, I mean, this is her business, so she could just take them on and they pay out of pocket through, I mean, there's other things that she can do, but through us, she stays within that budget.
Okay. I guess, I'm sorry. I was just, is there a mechanism that, or conversations that happen with her so we know where she's at?
Monthly,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Great.
she keeps track of, and stuff that she cannot share, like how, like, who specifically she's working with, but I mean, she has to the minute, like, what family she's working with, when she's working with them, whether she's at her office, or she's on Zoom, or she's here in the building, and she will report, like, hey, I'm got 12 and a half hours remaining.
Right.
In the contract, and knowing that we're getting close to Christmas break, like, how would you want us to use those hours? And that was kind of where we started having a lot of conversation about the parent education piece and her utilizing her resources to do the work for us and getting that way we can push that out to our families.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I have two questions. So first, how are students referred other than being caught with a substance? And what percent increase have you seen in referrals?
I'll start with the percent increase. I don't have that number in terms of percent increase. I mean, a lot of it is just anecdotal, right? Just depending on the number of situations that happen on a given year. With regard to, other than students getting caught, if they are connected with their counselor, social worker, there have been students who have come forward and said, hey, like, this is a problem, like, I need help. Students who have reached out just in support of other students, like, hey, my friend really is struggling, right? So it's coming from students, it's coming from parents, teachers that they build relationships with, counselors and social workers usually is by just word of mouth that they have come across this. Also typically in parent meetings that we've had when we start to see some changes in behavior and so forth, we start to kind of ask those questions and let them know that that resource is available.
And then is there a reason that you only randomly drug screen athletes and not the general population?
So we start with, this is just really within the policy, right? We can go ahead.
So actually, he just reached out to me, was it yesterday or the day before, with looking at it, we're looking at other aspects. I said, well, that would be a policy change, something we'd all have to talk about and bring forward. But there were a few other types of things to look at. It's our athletes and anybody. They could be in a club.
We have clubs, we have driver's ed, right? Geometry and construction classes where kids are using.
No, those are what, driver's ed and some of the classes with the tools, you asked if we could look at that.
Yes.
So those are conversations that we absolutely, will be having because the high school kind of noticed some of those things. One of the questions that you had asked and, something that, you did mention was through those conversations, they have weekly in their pods. So there are those where a teacher may have, noticed that, again, a student's grades were slipping, maybe they're becoming more withdrawn, something's changing. And so conversations with that team, the dean, the social worker, counselors, will have conversations, and maybe that's where a student will come forward with something, or with the parents. I would say more of the outside referrals might be a parent reaching out to say, hey, what can we do here? But they're watching for some of those other behaviors that, and it might not be this, but maybe there's another type of a support. And again, those happen on a weekly basis in that pod type approach.
But to answer your specific question, because students are voluntarily electing to be in athletics and activities, the student athletic and activity code of conduct which is where that lives.
Okay.
Randomly drug testing the general population is not something that we do or have a policy to support.
Right now. Okay.
We would need a much larger contract, I would assume.
Well, it would still be random,
Right.
but
Right.
it opens Pandora's box that would be, there's a lot of work there, which
Well,
we can certainly explore, but there's a lot of work there for public schools.
Yeah, and what I asked is that, Dr. Breland, do you have other districts that do for some of these other areas? And there are some and some are not. And so, yes, that would be a conversation starter that absolutely would be a policy change we would need to look at.
I was just curious, the legalities and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
The driver's ed is a really interesting approach from a liability perspective, right? It would be nice to make sure they're a little bit clean before they get behind, I think, one of our vehicles. How did we set the number of hours? Why didn't you ask for 1,500 versus 1,000? If it's going up.
It's data that comes from her. It's data that comes from Dawn. She's looking at trends and the number of students that we are referring. Every year that we go up for contract, she brings her contract this yearly. And every time we sit down, we look at the data and the number of students that we have, and we will either increase, and if there are additional hours, we may scale back the next year, just depending. Because we've seen the increase, in my time, we haven't necessarily gone back in the number of hours, but over her time, she was working with Dr. Rowe, we just kind of continue.
She also supports a number of high schools, so it's a matter of her availability.
Yes. She's increased her numbers with us because of all of what we have
We're her
primary.
We're her preference.
That's good.
Looks like we're getting about half time if she's 1,000 hours. So, the other question is, what are we doing? It sounds like a lot of this may be starting in the middle school. How do we bring either her in or something like that to try to help educate things? I mean, I'm a student of the 80s, and there was a lot of things going on there that pushed you away from drugs. That doesn't seem to be happening now.
And it's harder to change once you get to the high school level. You should be having some of that prior to. And so some of those hours were increased because of mainly dates, right, at that middle school age. And, they don't have what we've caught or seen might be very different than what's happening. But because of that, parents at that age have been really supportive. Let's try to get in and get that support ahead of time. One of the things that's not part of this, but to kind of answer that question, Mr. Dean, Safety and Security, has been working with our middle schools and even then into the elementary with our 2 curriculum folks over here to look at how do we do, because again, once they hit in the high school, and maybe even some of the upper parts of middle school, now that you can't change behavior, but you want to catch it before it starts. And so the old DARE program, right, 5th grade, that has changed and evolved. But what are other things that we can do early on, age appropriate, to get these things in front of students to educate, in front of parents to educate, and to do on a regular basis? And so maybe that's part of advisory. We do touch on that in middle school and health, but they get help once a quarter, right? So if I start first quarter of 6th grade, I might not have help again till the end of 7th grade. That's too long to go with some of those things. And so they are working and going to be putting together a proposal of what does that curriculum kind of look like to have a repeat regular from that 4th or 5th grade age on through, again, to be preventative. This is more here now, it's a response. So you should be seeing something coming forward with that.
I would add also, in the start of the next school year, there'll be, the vape detectors will be in the restrooms at the middle school level. So with the intent of enhancing the detection and then partnering with the health curriculum and advisory curriculum, and then also he's partnered with Laura Crane and the McHenry County Substance Abuse Coalition to bring in practitioners from Northwestern Medicine to have, not just coming from our teachers, but coming from health professionals of not only the health dangers, but then on the law enforcement side with our campus resource officers.
I just want to say that I really appreciate the staff and what they do to help protect our kids from substances. You know, they're really the first line of defense, staff and administrators, and, you know, they're really the people on the front lines that are there to help protect kids and get in front of this. And so that's a big job. Not only are they teaching curriculum, but they're also looking out for this now. So I'm very appreciative of our staff.
And yeah, that's a really good point, Gina. And usually the first people to recognize problems, especially if they come from homes that there are existing problems in. So we certainly appreciate your efforts. Thank you, Ms. Lover. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the legislation committee. That will be combined potentially in the next meeting, but I'll take this one on. There's no main updates, but I have been, and maybe Dr. Rowe, not to put you on the spot, but there is this bill around the libraries for schools that's coming through Illinois. Are we set up with a process that meets the requirements that Pritzker's about to sign?
You know, I saw that today for the first time. I was not looped into that prior, so I've got to do some research on that, but I'll have an answer for you.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
I heard it, I think, today too.
Yeah.
So
the only thing I would add is there's Illinois has, I just recently heard there's something like 7,000 bills annually that Illinois puts forward, and usually somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 of them pertain to education. In other states, it's incomparable. Just the volume is unbelievable. So, you know, we're appreciative of our partners in Springfield that keep us in the loop. There hasn't been a ton of activity yet, but we have until May. There'll be a flurry of activity coming between now and I think May 19th is when the general session closes. So should have some more information maybe at the next board meeting.
thank you.
Yeah, so every Friday, our IASB, School Board Association, provides a weekly Friday update after the session on Fridays of what's currently going on. So like I'm on their website right now, and they've got each week, you can see the updates on some of the bills that are in progress and that they know that there's possibly imminent action or there's some stuff that's going on that could possibly start to move these things. So I think, and I don't know, I mean, like I said, we're getting them. I don't know if you guys have started, the newer board members have started to get these updates.
I've gotten them.
Okay, I just want to make
I think
sure.
they've shown up.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it's in there and that, so you know that it's a resource to kind of pay attention to what existing bills there are. It's not, you know, it's not all inclusive, but it's what's definitely on their radar.
Right.
So.
All right. So moving,
Maybe I'm sorry, but just as frame of reference for those that are watching the bill, in case you aren't aware, there's a bill that that Governor Pritzker is planning on signing that would outlaw, so to speak, the banning of books in libraries. And I think that's what you're referencing. I just have to dive in and understand the details of it, but that's the bill in question, just for clarity for those that are watching.
yeah, I think it ties funding to libraries that have a process that would restrict it, or at least have due process before you go through and remove a book. I don't know that they have laws completely eliminating everything, but you at least need to have a process. No, but thank you for that. That is the bill I was talking about, and I think it's to Governor Pritzker right now, so it should be moving forward. All right, moving on to item 11, the minutes. I had sent you an email. There was one little correction. Other than that, I don't have any problem. All right, thank you.
There's 3 typos.
All right, yeah, Mr. Quagliano found more.
No, it's the same one, but it's a repeat, so I don't know if it's the same. I'll make sure of it
Okay.
after the meeting, but it just, yeah, it doesn't change the minutes other than just correcting the use of a word. the wrong tent, it's just the wrong word. Use multiple tents, so.
I'm curious. All right, if there were any other questions about the minutes, we can move on. All right, moving to new business. So this is a new section in our agendas, and this is really an opportunity for different board members to bring up things that they would like to see in future meetings. It's not really meant for discussion, just really more for asking for action items that we put out there. So I do have a few, but I'll let anybody else if they've got anything.
So I have one, as an action item, I'd like an update on the light program. I'd like to know, kind of where we've been and where we're going, and how soon we can get those kids back into the high school.
Well, just as a point of clarification, I actually plan for the next board meeting to come with that very update. So
Perfect.
with update on our process. Our core planning group has been meeting every 2 weeks for a number of months. We've got some information and actually need some direction from the board, so it'll be a good conversation.
Great. Thank you.
And then any other? All right, so I've got a couple here. The first one I will call basically an item to review what I'll call the discipline process for the district. And we've had many public comments here, and then there's some high visibility incidences that have been out in the public. And I think we should, for the board meeting, it would be good for the public to see what is the process we follow and go through and bring it to the different grade levels, right? Because what we do with a first, second, third grader is different than what we will do with someone in the high school or someone in the middle school. And I think it would be good to go over that process in this meeting, first of all, to set the baseline of how you're looking at it, and then how it reflects to SB 100, which a lot of people talk about on that. And I just think it would be helpful for the board to hear, as well as the public, to understand the constraints on that.
Mr. Bittman, next month we bring forward any changes to the handbook for approval. I think that would tie very, very nicely to maybe set the stage through something like this and then hop into the handbook. Would it be okay if we did that next month?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, really just want to make sure we have the discussion because it's out there, and I know I would benefit from all the discussions we've had. Some of it I've heard from you already, but I think everybody else would benefit from it.
Sure. And I'll also partner with our special education department just because that process looks a little bit different for us too within IEP and 504. So we'll take it from that lens. We'll talk about maybe some situations that are different for students who do have the IEP or 504, and then we'll do that by the various grades. So.
And I also, as part of this, I'd like to, and I know you have a plan for this because I heard you yesterday at Heinemann, around the Parent Advisory Board or the Parent Advisory Committee, whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
I'd like to understand what your plans are from an administration side of how you're going to set that up, because I think it'd be really good to have a committee with people's names who help drive what is the policy for discipline, working with administration and staff.
That's it's perfect, and it'll tie in. You were at last night's one of our meetings, and some of them have had a few more, but still with the school sizes that we have, I'd love more people to be part of that. So we've met that each month, or each year you have to do that on an annual basis because of our numbers being a little bit lower with that. Well, I would say a lot low, right? So we're going to do that steering committee that will be more set, and again, we want that for a few years at a time. So we'll bring some updates to that, and I'd love some input on how maybe you'd like to see some of those things, and we can kind of firm that up to start that second layer of that next year, and it'll be just much more transparent with people from the community and each of our buildings.
Yeah. Thank you. And in terms of attendance, I did hear Dr. Beelan promise to triple Conley's attendance for this, for the one that's next week at the high school.
Well, I think he's close, because we've got an RSVP, I saw the list, but still for building 3,000, we'd like a few more.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pick on that. But I know you've got the next meeting, so. So with that, just a couple other items. I'd like to have Mr. Altmeyer provide a full accounting of how much we have spent on the electric buses and the infrastructure, and really an update on the program of when they're going to arrive. Because I think the first time was early 2023. And look, I live in the world of supply chain building machines. I understand that things are delayed. I'd just like to understand what the costs have been when we look at the whole project, and then also look at what the status is of the project. And then the last thing is a minor thing, and it could just be a little bit of report from Mr. Altmeyer, but what is the cost of the addition to the coffee shop in the high school that was put through? Because I didn't see anything in the board meetings really outlining what that construction entailed. So I'd like to understand what the cost was to expand that.
He did give us that, but that's,
I may have missed it. There's
no, it was a while ago.
Well, a lot of it was.
not the new,
was done,
they just did an extension
Okay.
in the last few months.
Okay.
Not
probably,
the full
it was
one.
probably done in-house, was it in-house?
It was.
I mean, if you have some, just a glimpse, we'll still have Mark
So
come with
if you're
the
just talking about the
details.
most recent one, those are the storage closet management.
Storage closet, there are some coolers in there.
Two outlets outsourced to electrical company, but the rest was in-house.
And then we
Well,
got some
come with
coolers
details.
and all that kind of stuff in there
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
And that's all I have for new business. Does anybody else have any other items?
Yeah, just the point on new business is, so that administration's clear, it's meant more to be for items that are at the next committee of the whole meeting as opposed to the next board meeting unless you specify. Because it shouldn't be on a board meeting for action, it should go on the next committee of the whole meeting.
Wherever it fits.
And that was the point that I was gonna make, Mr. Quagliano, even for like this, there's no action to come from it unless, you know, the only action that may ultimately result would be if the board's approving the budget at some point.
Okay.
But I'll approach that with, kind of an overview of our progress, where we are, and then, I will be seeking some direction that I'll be able to glean through the conversation.
Perfect.
All right, with that, we will move to section 13, which is moving to closed session. I don't know, do I need a second for this?
Yes.
All right, does anybody would like to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. All right, can we do a roll call?
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
Mr. Craddy?
Yes.
Mrs. Murray? Yes. Mr. Bittman?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Troy? Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Then the meeting is adjourned, or to closed session. motion to open the meeting from closed session, is that right?
You don't have to make a motion.
Oh,
We're back.
all right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy,
Here.
Mr. Troy, Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Pittman,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
All right, we will,
Make a motion.
make a motion to adjourn the meeting, in a voice motion, or a motion, does somebody want to?
Second, Sean will second.
Sean will second the motion, and then we'll have a voice vote to adjourn. The ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it,
Meeting is.
meeting adjourned.